And there's a message from that man telling me to come to this room and to clean it. That the woman there is to be called later that day and moved to a new tower. And there's a message from that man telling me to come to this room and to clean it. That the woman there is to be later that day and moved to a new tower. And I dressed myself and we had no one.
Welcome to Radical Listening. I'm your host, Phil Johnson. That's Phil Johnson Live on Instagram and Twitter.
And I'm Clifton Holtznagel. I'm the co-host.
And today we have a very special guest. Now, this person I've seen around town in plenty of shows and is absolutely hilarious. But today we are actually going to talk about his directing work. It's Issac Lamb. And you may recognize him from YouTube, as a matter of fact.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Outed ya.
Yeah.
Again.
And we're going to talk a little bit about Arlington.
Yeah.
So let's just welcome to the show, Issac Lamb.
That's good to be here.
Huh? How are you doing?
Well, I was just telling you guys I have 6-month-old twins.
Yeah.
That are freshly baked and newly out of the oven, and so I'm not sleeping a ton right now.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit sleep deprived and overjoyed most of the time, but yeah, like very, very much on the edge of feeling like a crazy person most of the time.
I can see that. Now that you have children, do you feel like you're gonna have to like move away from being in the theater as much, or how does that affect your relationship to the theater?
I mean, children will move you regardless of what your plans are. They're gonna move you no matter whether you're a theater artist or a policeman or a firefighter or whatever.
Sure.
So I could sit here and say, well, they're not going to move me, but they will. They already have.
You're not sleeping.
I'm not sleeping. Yeah. But I would, but it's really important to me that it's important to Amy and myself, my wife and myself, that they grow up with a father who is a theater artist and that they are a part of that world and that they understand what I do for a living and for my art and that it's such a huge part of who I am. It will always be a huge part of who I am. And for them to know any other version of me would be to not know their father. And so I think, as much as they will, the needs and necessities of raising children will like push you in certain directions. They're going to be well versed in what I do. And, I couldn't survive without theater. I have to just keep doing it. That's why I'm still doing it.
Are you going to raise them to be theater babies?
Oh, that has such a negative connotation. Theater baby. I feel like I just get glimpses of Gypsy, like,
well, yes.
Sing out, Louise.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, Amy and my wife was a professional dancer for 25 years or something, and danced on Broadway and everything. And so very early on, when we were first dating, we were like, our children will not be dancers because she just understands the pressures and the like insanity that surrounds the dance world. Yeah. And the more I think about it, I'm like, maybe they won't be theater artists either. Maybe dad will be enough, and they'll grow up to be.
They're gonna rebel and become architects.
Yeah, or just
thinking, or engineers.
Nothing would make me happier than for them to have like stability and health insurance. And
wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. And so I don't know, but no, I don't know. In all seriousness, I'll let them do whatever they want to do. Probably.
So Arlington, let's talk about it. How did you get involved with the project, and just tell me about how that process got started.
Enda Walsh is the playwright, and he's an Irish playwright, and Third Rail has produced 2 of his shows already, and has sort of circled around many of the other shows that he's written, and they've all been in contention at some point for season selection, and we're just big fans of his writing. He's just a mad Irishman, and he writes these really peculiar plays, and they're very language driven, and they're very, he just has a very specific point of view on the world. And he writes a lot about like the stories we tell. I mean, all of his plays in some respect are about how we define ourselves through stories, or we trap ourselves with stories, or we grow through stories, or we tell the same stories over and over and over and over and over and over again to ourselves, and what effect that has on us and our humanity. And if there's any better metaphor, I think, for what it is we do as theater artists. I'm not sure what it is. So if his work has always really drawn us as a company to it. And so anytime he has a new play out, it feels like one of us is like, on the cutting edge of getting a copy of it and trying to read it and bring it to the company. So I had read in the New York Times about this play when it was, it hadn't yet had a New York production, but it was at the Galway Arts Festival. And it was a new Enda Walsh play. And the thing that really piqued my interest about it was that it had this section in the middle, this 20-minute section in the middle where there was no speaking.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the basis of the article I had read. Like, what is this 20-minute, ostensibly dance piece doing in the middle of an Enda Walsh play? A guy who's known for writing these like insanely long speeches. And so I was immediately intrigued by it, and then scrambled to get myself a copy of it, and did. And then I read it, and it terrified me in that way. That's like, I really want to do this, because it scares the crap out of me. And so I brought it to the company, and I encouraged everybody to read it. And at one point, I think Maureen, our artistic director, and myself and Rebecca Lingefelter, who ended up playing Isla in the production, we sat in this conference room in the Sunnyside building, and the three of us just read it together. And it was like, we read it in like 60 minutes on like a hot afternoon when none of us had any time, but we were like, we've got to read this play out loud and just see if it's something we want to do. And we read it, and it was like, we were like 10 pages in, and we were just like, we're doing this play. So it was not like a huge leap for us because it's Enda Walsh's work, but it also feels like a bit of a departure for him as a playwright. It's a little different than his other work. And so that was intriguing to me.
For people who may not have made it to Arlington, how would you describe this play or this production?
It's a time and space not too far removed from our own. In the script, it specifies as no particular time or place, but it feels very not dissimilar to our current time, or a time not too far in the future from now. But it is it's set in a dystopia of some kind, and it's a play about what happens when you keep people in spaces, whether they be prisons or mental hospitals or whatever the space, this room that we're watching people in is. It's ostensibly a waiting room, but that the impact of a space on a human body over time in isolation, it's an examination of the effect of those things.
Yeah.
And
so was that the idea for the set that we saw, was that they were in a waiting room?
Yeah. So it is in the script. It's sort of, he says it's a waiting. He says it calls it a waiting room, I think. But it functions in all these crazy ways, right? There's some of it is really described in the pages of the script, like the three bench seats are described, the ticket machine, and then number readout is just the now serving kind of thing is described in the set. There's a radio that's described. So there are all these. There's a microphone where they go and speak into and to tell their stories. So all of these things are kind of described in the set or prescribed by the playwright. But then there's in all of Enda's work, there's obviously like massive amounts left up to your imagination.
Yeah.
Because those four elements don't really fill a room. So how do you make the room the thing that it's supposed to be? And one of the big challenges for our set designer, Peter Cassander, was that we were in the Coho space, which is so much smaller than the initial, like the space they originally did it in New York City is St. Anne's Warehouse, which is this big, well-appointed theater space. And they did it end stage. So, there was a fourth wall between the room and the audience, and that allows for a certain amount of special effects and tricks, like an ease of doing some of those things. And we didn't have any of that distance in the Coho. And so he made the decision really early on, and we thought this was a really interesting way to go of really enclosing the room and sort of putting the audience inside the room with the people, because whether you wanted to do that or not, they were going to feel that way, because that's the feeling of that tiny little thrust of the Coho space. So
now, what did you want to say with this piece? What did you want the audience to kind of leave being like, yeah, okay?
I don't know. That's a tricky question. I feel like you get into a little bit of trouble as a director
Okay.
when you want people to walk away with a message that's specific. You know?
Or even a feeling, you know?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you always have a vision for the piece, and you always have, I guess you have an idea of how it might affect people, but to sort of presuppose you could control them to think a certain way or to take a certain message away is really, it's hard enough in like film where you have a lot of control over what people look at and see, and it's even harder, I think, in the theater. But I was struck by the fact that the show is actually called Arlington: A Love Story. There's a subtitle in it, and even though it is set in this dystopian, somewhat future, and it's in this, you know, it's these three different people in some kind of holding cell, that there is actually a love story to track through it, and I found that like really powerful, and that it felt like what he was writing, what Enda Walsh was writing, was in response to what feels like the world kind of collapsing around us and all the crap that's happening right now that terrifies you on a day-to-day basis. And his sort of somewhat hopeful response to that was to write a love story amidst all of the dystopia. And so I really was hoping, I wanted to honor both the bleakness of, you know, a dystopian play, but I also wanted to give the audience some humanity to hold on to throughout the piece. So my hope is that people walk away feeling moved by it, and not just feeling like they've been, you know, bashed over the head with misery for 90 minutes, but that there's some optimism in it to take away too.
So what do you think it says, seeing that it is a love story, what do you think it says about society, what society does to love? Because it seems like that's what it's saying. It seems like something has happened and society has changed in a big way, and there's this love story happening. And what's it saying about, you know, love in our age? Do you think? Do you think it's something about that? Because I felt like it was very much about that love story, about interpersonal relationships, but it had a lot to say about society as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think it draws a lot from some of the other sources of dystopian, you know, writing that we're familiar with, of, you know, 1984, Orwell, and you know, Michel Foucault, and, you know, all these like 20th century texts that were a lot about like the industrial prison systems and you know, the panopticon and the ways that we trap people, and so it clearly, I think, is drawing from very rich source material in order to say, you know, what's happening right now is not so different than this. You know, there's mass incarceration on a huge scale, and you know, a lot of the story of sort of how the world in Arlington gets to its place is highly relatable to either instances in the past that have happened in human history, or things, you know, echo things that are being said now in the socio-political realm around the world. And so I think it is definitely trying to invest some energy there. But I also think he's writing a love story in it because what else are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know, I think that, and I think there's an essence to the play that is really like, love is going to find a way, you know, not to quote Jurassic Park, life finds a way, but love will find a way. In the most, you know, bleak of circumstances, people are going to find love, and they're going to find connection, and they're going to find each other. And I think he's trying to, he's not particularly, I think he wouldn't call himself an optimist, Enda Walsh, but I think he also doesn't feel like it's hopeless either. And I feel like the hope that is illustrated in the play is, and it's an open-ended question, is, you know, not to ruin it for anybody, but the ending is ambiguous on purpose. I think you can you could read it as a happy ending. You could read it as a metaphorical ending. You could read it as, you know, in a literal manner. You could read it as a sad ending. I mean, I think there's evidence there to read it many different ways. But I think he's doing that on purpose, I think, because he's saying love is not enough to save us from ourselves, and also it is the only thing we have. And I think he feels similarly about theater, you know, that it is not enough to save us from these regimes, and yet we were going to continue to tell ourselves stories because that's all we've got.
Yeah. Now, how did the actual movement piece, and actually there's several movement there's several gestural kind of sections, but there's definitely an extended movement piece halfway through the play. What was the process of creating that?
The play is broken up into 3 sections, and the middle section is wordless. And the woman who performs it, Kayla Hansen, I cast her back in the summertime of last year, and really I took her as the audition piece for that performer. I had I saw a lot of dancers and a lot of movers and a lot of people who were interested in physical theater and physical storytelling, and I asked them to create something. Can you hear that on the microphone?
I think you can.
Probably.
Yeah, that's my
debut.
There
that's
you go.
that's my
A theater
children.
artist after all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she's got pipes.
It's already on a theater podcast.
Yeah, sing out, Louise. So I asked the auditioners who came in for the part to create something that was 5 minutes long. That was just like, because one of the things I decided early on was I wasn't super interested in choreography. Like I wasn't really interested in hiring a choreographer per se, who was going to set a dance piece and then have that be on a dancer's body. I felt really strongly that center section should feel a lot closer to sections 1 and 3, and it should feel as human as that. Like, it shouldn't feel like a modern dance piece all of a sudden. It should feel like a person experiencing something, rather than just like, we're going to shift forms of storytelling. You know, it wanted to feel like organic to the piece, and so I wanted it to be devised, and so I wanted a performer who had that in their toolbox. So Kayla came in with a 5-minute piece that I was really moved by in the audition process. So we actually used that 5-minute section, and I gave some parameters that were like, you know, it needs to have this, that, and the other thing. It needs to be this long, and has a moment where you fly, and a moment where you die, and a moment of magic, and, you know, kind of like a basic structure for devising. And she created this thing that then became the seed for the 20-minute piece.
And then with the other kind of clowning section where, you know, he's walking back and forth and changing the outfits and all that, was that kind of a similar process? Or
yeah, I mean, that was just me and the actors. So there's a sequence in scene 1 where Rebecca dances with a puppet that she's created. That was just a little bit of choreography from me, and then some clown bits that we threw at it, and you know, just kind of patched it together. And then similarly with Nick in the clothes, and in scene 3, it was the game is prescribed in the script. It says a bunch of clothes fall from the ceiling, and he has to try them on as fast as possible. But then we were like, okay, but that song is, you know, 2.5 minutes long. So how do we make this interesting, or how do we make it? How do we make it a thing rather than just this like strange event that happens?
Okay.
And so that was a collaborative process between, like, the costume designer Jenny Ampersand would bring in a piece and be like, "Ooh, I like that. He looks like the Gorton's fisherman," you know, and like then that would erupt into like, okay, you know, cast the reel and reel yourself across the stage. And so it was a little bit of like, you know, the best processes are super collaborative, like that, where somebody brings in an idea and that sparks 3 or 4 other ideas. And
great.
Yeah.
I'm going to briefly kind of touch on your background and kind of know how you got here in the first place. So how did you find your way into directing? Were you a director first? Are you an actor first?
Also, like, we know you from your comedic stylings, and curious how you ended up directing.
Yeah, exactly. Something
such a dark play, which you definitely brought moments of humor to it. It was great. It really helped it move to have those things in there.
That's funny. I mean, I guess I'm funny. I guess I'm funny.
You're hilarious, man.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like even as an actor, I've tried to be versatile.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have done a lot of comedy, and I certainly have a facility with it. I think partly because my first professional job as an actor was this one-man comedy show.
Right.
That I toured for like 7 years.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my grad school, you know, was like learning how to make thousands of people laugh, you know, all at once. So yeah, I think I do have a facility with comedy in that way, but I really have tried to, you know, be as broadly skilled an artist as I can. So I do musical theater, and I do a lot of straight theater, and, you know, certainly Third Rail does not always do comedies. And
Right.
So most
You
of the
always
work I've done on stage for Third Rail has been
Yeah.
not always funny.
Yeah. By the way, shout out to Ordinary Days. I didn't know that you directed.
Oh yeah, that was
and I
me.
saw that.
Yeah,
I
that
was
was
like,
me.
oh,
Oh,
that's
thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So I got into directing. To kind of wrap that back around, I got into directing because, well, first of all, my degree is in film directing.
Okay.
So it wasn't theater directing, but I had sort of struck out as a young 20-something to become a filmmaker. Was kind of my first passion, and yet like every career opportunity that came my way was as an actor. And so it just felt like after a while the universe was telling me, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Do this other thing. We keep giving you opportunities to do it. I also, of course, love being a theater artist, and so I just kind of followed where the universe led me. But I never really lost that like desire to control the elements of storytelling, and that can be a really useful tool as an actor, that you have a brain that does that. It can also be like a really frustrating tool to be in a process where you feel like you have a really passionate and well-founded idea about where something should go, and then not being the director, not have the voice to actually push it in that direction.
Yeah.
It's partly why I joined Third Rail, and I'm so passionate about being a part of a company like that, is regardless of position or title, we all have a voice in those decisions and those processes. That's a way of making work that really works for me. I feel passionately about. But I also knew that eventually I was going to have to direct something, because you can't. It's like either you have to put up or shut up.
Yeah.
So I just kind of started small. I mean, the first quote unquote professional job I had as a director, I had directed in an educational setting a number of times, but the first time someone gave me actual money to direct a show with adults was at Lakewood. Actually, my wife was like, I've always wanted to do Sweet Charity, and I was like, great, I love that show. I want to direct it, and so I pitched it to them, and I think much more because Amy was attached to it. They were like, great, yeah, we'll do it. If it means Amy will do it, we'll do it. But that was really where I got my start, and that was my first gig, and I look back on it now and I'm like mortified. I feel like I was like, oh God, I was so terrible back then. But like work begets work.
Yeah.
And so that gig got me a gig at Oregon Children's Theater, which got me a gig at Broadway Rose, which got me a gig at Portland Playhouse, which it's like each one of those things leads to another opportunity, and it's really just like if you can make enough work, eventually the people you want to work for are going to see your work if you keep inviting them to that work, and that's what continues to happen for me. So
that's great. So you're kind of maybe you're hitting this arc of directing. You're starting to hit the curve.
Coming back around, he's directing film soon.
Right. The crazy thing is, I just, for years I worked so hard to get my equity card as an actor and like get my insurance through my union and all of that kind of stuff. And I directed so much last year that I'm going to lose my insurance from my actor's equity.
Oh, because directors aren't in that,
because
right?
it's a totally different union.
Right.
So it was like my directing career is so successful that it's costing me insurance. Yeah, I know.
Man.
It's
such a weird world.
It's a weird world.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, let's do a quick fire round of
Headlines.
headlines.
First one: scooters or no?
Yeah.
The electric scooters.
Oh,
Scooters or no?
no.
No.
I say no.
All
Okay,
right.
great.
Fair
No.
enough.
I'm a native Portlander. I say no.
Yeah. You get 4 votes for that.
Okay, great.
So you have
Fantastic.
not ridden any of the scooters yet?
I have not. No.
I do feel like you need to try them.
I feel like I would be a hypocrite if I did. I feel like now I'm so
You've
passionately
dug in.
I've dug
You've dug
in,
in.
and now if I'm on one, I feel like that's
Did you see
just that's just like I'm such a hypocrite if I do that.
All right.
Did you see they have sit-down ones that look like little motorcycles now,
Of
as
course
of this
they do.
weekend?
Of course they
It's
do.
gonna be an issue.
God,
It's gonna be an issue.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
What else do we have? This is just kind of an interesting thing. So Genius, the website, they hit a Morse code message in their song lyrics online because they were trying to prove that Google was copywriting their song lyrics. So it just kind of goes to this larger idea of like,
Big Brother.
yeah.
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 Right?
And then let me also point out the irony that you directed this play, and you have an Alexa sitting.
I
right
know, right? We unplugged the Alexa just for the recording of this podcast, so we could talk shit about her. No, I
so
know.
she doesn't know anything about.
No,
what's
it's like
going on.
right. It's that's the world we live in now. It's like you can rage all you want against it, and yet, like I can rage all I want against the scooters, but they're coming. You know, it's like they're here,
and eventually you'll be on one.
I know, right? Eventually, I will. It will like.
It will make sense one day.
Right? Yeah, totally.
I have to get across town, but it's so crowded. Let me stop traffic.
I try hard to be a Luddite, and I can't. I just can't.
Yeah.
I will say that I hopped a scooter just to, because first of all, when you're going to tech, you almost never want to bring your car because you're parking all day in Portland.
Right.
It's going to either cost money or be impossible. And I was like, you know what? I'll just do a scooter, And it took me 8 minutes to get all the way downtown, and then I was able to, park it, and I only paid like maybe $1.80. I think was what I paid.
Whoa.
$1.80 for like several, I think a couple miles. So I think it's worth it if you.
Is this podcast sponsored by a scooter
Brought
company?
to you by Lime Scooters.
Actually,
no, absolutely
yes.
not. if they pay us.
If you're listening, Lime.
Oh, so I also saw that Portland Postmates workers joined a nationwide Saturday protest of a pay cut recently. So what do you think about this gig economy? Do you think that...
I'm down. I'm down on the gig economy. I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's like it becomes so ubiquitous, you have no choice but to use it. It's like cab companies are going to be gone soon, so you have to use Lyft or Uber. But I think it's up to us to like hold these companies accountable because they shouldn't get the benefits of these industries that they disrupt without actually having to take responsibility for the workers whose
and then they
jobs and
completely
benefits
dismantle our unions.
Right.
Everyone's forcing everyone into private contractorships and everything now.
Which is crap.
Yeah, they just want us all to do our own taxes, which is awful.
It's bullshit. Yeah.
All right. Do you have any plugs? Anything you want to shout out?
I think people need to definitely go see Our Ruined House, which is Portland Experimental Theater Ensemble's newest show. It opens in a couple weeks, I think. And I say that mostly because almost the entire design team for Arlington also is designing this show.
Awesome.
And so if you
Strong design.
if you like their work, which you will if you go and see Arlington, or if you saw it, then you're definitely going to like what they do with Our Ruined House. So go check out their work.
And I'll plug that too because I have a faceless cameo in it at one point. I'm in a black bodysuit.
What?
You won't be able to tell it's me in a video. Don't worry. You won't see it.
I know those moves anywhere.
Nice. I actually am working with pretty much the same design team on Mrs. Pemberley at PCS.
Do you know that I'm in Mrs. Pemberley at PCS?
Oh, great. Oh, that's going to be exciting.
I'm playing Darcy.
Oh, of course you are.
Yeah, yes. Can't you tell?
Oh, that's great. Well, let me plug that.
Yeah, come see Mrs. Pemberley. Christmas at Pemberley?
Yeah.
Miss Bennett, Christmas at Pemberley.
Yes,
That's what it's called.
It's a long title.
Yeah. Miss Bennett, Christmas at Pemberley. That's what it's called.
Good, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Directed by new artistic director at PCS, Marissa Wolf.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah, big shout out there.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for giving us some time to talk to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, you guys. Thanks for coming and talking to me.
If you have another project, we'd love to have you back.
I would love to. Absolutely. I'm going to have many.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let us know.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can share it or like it and
Let people know.
yeah, and let people know.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. See ya.
And I see only a few of the people making the journey further into the city. I watch them disappearing in the towers, going about their work like me.